Well, tonight, what I'd like to talk about is how do we build the next great Slovak technology company? Um, I very much believe this can be done. I've spent the last 25 years investing in startups, almost primarily in the USA and Silicon Valley in Seattle, and I've spent the last 2 years or so meeting folks in Slovakia and the ecosystem there and the founders, and helped fund or start about 4 or 5 companies in that time. And I'm just so hopeful of the talent level and what can be built here. The first question that comes up, and for those of you that are not in necessarily the business world, who might be in policy or otherwise, is why? Why do you want these types of companies? And the answer is just the jobs, the durable jobs, high paying, and the wealth creation that comes with innovation and the new economy. These founders and early employees, will take that money and they build homes and they employ services, and that money stays in the economy and hopefully attracts more talent, ideas, and turns into further companies and jobs and prosperity. And you create a virtuous cycle, an ecosystem that we have over in the States right now and in other places around the world. It's really capitalism at its finest. I don't believe that capitalism is the appropriate model for many industries, but it happens to be for innovation, for things that are that long dated and forward looking, where there needs to be so much risk taken up front, both by the investors and by the founders and the early employees who do a lot of unpaid work. It will lead to security and prosperity in the future. That's why we want to have a Slovak innovation company, and a great one. To get this done, we will continue to need to develop 4 things. The most important, which, and it's probably 80% of this, is people, talent. What we're looking for is future founders or current founders who are relentlessly resourceful. Slovakia has great talent. It does. You have obviously wonderful education, very hardworking culture, but also more so, this country is young. There was entrepreneurship just in the last 30 years to build what exists now. I came over in the mid 90s, and it was still nation building. It was so young, and just trying to privatize industries. And think what's been built now in 30 years. I mean, Bratislava looks like a different city. And 30 years ago, Slovakia was producing refugees, and now you're taking them in. It's truly extraordinary. So there's a natural resourcefulness to this country that I think is unique. The younger generation as well, I've been so impressed by. They grew up with YouTube and Facebook, and they are global citizens, and they see how the rest of the world lives and aspires to, and they want that as well. They have a lot of ambition. They speak English, and they will go anywhere. I've been just so impressed by the folks under 30 in the country now, and hopefully they will have more and more leadership as they get older. Immigration. That's something I think that's new to Slovakia, and I'm hoping that there's a way to harness, to get the best of immigration. Obviously, there's folks that are fleeing other countries, and that's important to take them in and give them refuge. But additionally, to find those talented folks who want to live in Slovakia, in Central Europe, and find a way to attract and retain them. I can only give you, not it's the only example, but I just know the American market the best. We have a visa system for folks to come in to study in our schools and to stay and create companies. And there's been an inordinate percentage of immigrant or the children of immigrants that do very well in entrepreneurship and are more likely to build these types of companies. So, focusing on things like immigration at the highest level for technology is something I think is key as part of competing in this global economy right now for innovators. An example right now, we just helped funded a company in Bratislava by an Irish immigrant. It's a wonderful software company in identity and security called Trustmatic. And the founder, Donald, is Slovak. His kids speak Slovak. This is his home. He's been here for 12 years. You want to keep more folks like that because they've had to be so resourceful in their life. So again, it's part of a few other pieces of the puzzle here, but it starts and ends with people. How do you identify that talent? How do you nurture it? How do you retain it? How do you attract it from around the country? One other idea on the people side that I just don't know well enough in Slovakia is postdoctorate fellowships, the study and the research that goes on after PhD programs in science and technology fields. To have more of that stays on shore, that stays inside the country, partners perhaps with other entities globally. I know there's been other discussions about partnering with labs in MIT or Stanford or places in the States, but to have some locus in the country where higher end research is going on in these super important fields out there. I think that's critical for Slovakia to have a place at the table when these companies are being formed, when it's being decided where the factories are going to be to make the robotics or nuclear fusion plants or wherever is next on the horizon. So again, people. I'm an investor. I invest in people. I really sometimes don't even care what the idea is up front. If I'm inspired by somebody, they're going to figure it out. They may change. We call it pivoting. They may pivot 4 or 5 times, and they start with one idea, they end with another. I invested early in Uber, and at first we were buying the cars ourselves, and hiring was a private system. And eventually, Travis Kalanick, whose grandfather was born in Nicolosa, he said, "Why don't we just give this out as software to everybody?" And it was just one idea, and he just did it, and all of a sudden it exploded. So again, it's focus on the people first. The second piece of this is ideas, and here's what's very important about, I think, the innovation economy is it has to be global. These have to be global companies. We can't be thinking about technology companies that just serve either Slovakia or the Central European markets. The projects are too big and require too much capital. I go through the math sometimes of what a venture capital investor sees. A seed investor capital, someone who invests very early before there are revenues, but when there's a product, they want to make about 5 times their money in the next 7 to 10 years. That's enough of a return to attract capital and to pay you for the risk you're taking. 80% of the companies that early folks invest in fail. 80%, and we're used to that. So think that 20% that survives has to produce a 5x return on all the money. That's about those companies that succeed have to basically return about 25 to 50 times your investment. That means they need to become several $100 million, dollar or euro companies within the next 7 to 10 years. So they have to be big. Again, this comes to the notion of, research, global research, getting tied into all the big ideas that are going on in the world right now on the technology space, on the innovation economy, and beginning to be part of that discussion and have the entrepreneurs and the talent, the folks that really shine, pick up on what's going on at this big scale. You know, the second piece of this when it comes to ideas it doesn't have to be a brand new industry. You know, Slovakia has fantastic advantages right now when it comes to manufacturing. You know, you have power, you have hydroelectric power. You know, half the country is water flowing down hills. You have nuclear power, which is the most efficient and clean right now that we have. You have mining, you have iron ore, you have steel. These are incredibly important with infrastructure to distribute it all over Europe. There's a company in the States called 3M. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're one of the largest companies in the United States. And they began originally making conveyor belts and grinding wheels to grind up iron ore and other minerals to turn into sandpaper, right? So you'd slide something along a thing, you'd stick the sandpaper on it, and, you know, for grinding and refining, you know, materials and things like that. Well, later you know, that business started to go out, so then they got into the business of making film for cameras. You slide things on a conveyor belt, you stick a bunch of stuff on it, and you can make photography film or camera film. Well, that business went under, and so then they started the next thing, which was making masking tape and packing tape. And then now they make Post-it notes. And it's just this notion of constantly innovating. But it's very important that it's Slovak owned and Slovak based. That is the benefit to the society. Right now, I know that there's a lot of foreign ownership, particularly in the car companies and what have you. But that can change. Right now, you have all these folks who've worked there for the last 30 years. Hopefully, they will spin out, begin to build contract manufacturing, other manufacturing sites in these future economies, because the car companies will evolve. They'll turn into electronic vehicles, which they're doing right now. And then eventually self-driving cars, and then other robotics for other industries. And you want that, you know, to some extent, if we can figure out how to keep the innovation side of that evolution inside Slovakia, because this is the perfect place in Europe to house those types of factories and those types of jobs and scientists and what have you. So again, second, ideas, very important. The third, and this is by far, you know, this is in order of importance. Third is capital. And, you know, there is already a good start. I've been very impressed by the capital formation so far. And I think the government's done a good job in some of the programs in Europe and Central Europe and in Slovakia to have early stage funds that have support, so that they're out there, ideas are getting formulated, they're getting a chance to at least launch. And you know, there's an economy around this now. There's young folks in particular who are trying to start companies. We need the older folks in industry who want to spin out and use what they've seen, what they've built up, working in industry for 10 or 15 years. Those are what the really great companies come out of, where you have that deep industry knowledge. You see a problem not being met, and then you spin out and start your own company. That's what we need to see as the next stage. Right now, you have the young folks, and they're building software companies from scratch in their 20s. And that's an important piece of the economy, but it's going to be that deep industry knowledge coming from, you know, folks who've lived in industry, worked with customers, and see unmet needs. That piece of the puzzle right now, I think, is doing well. Also, grants. I've seen a lot of good support. Marian Bocek and the Avenea guys who've sponsored Inabat, I've been working with the last few months. They've really taken advantage of that, and they've built a wonderful factory in Colorado, and certainly you guys have heard of it. And this is the beginning. It's a blueprint. You know, you need another few dozen of those types of you know, factories being here, where that R&D facility, and there's 100 scientists already working there to build the batteries for the next electric vehicles, whether they be cars or planes or trucks or what have you. It's a good model that they've built to continue to work with government and real estate developers to again have Slovakia be the locus of some piece of that global supply chain, and hopefully the higher value added part of it, the R&D. So I think that's been a very successful program to date. The idea is, would it scale, and does it get into other industries, right? So you need to have more folks involved and willing to take those kind of risks. It goes back to this notion of people. Marian was out of the country for 20 years studying and working. He got attracted back because of that program, because of the manufacturing advantages of Slovakia. And now he's back here in Bratislava, forming and running a company. It's very exciting. Again, we just need more of those types of things. Lastly, and I'll wrap it up, we need to continue to nurture a culture of innovation. And what does that mean? It has to be easier to start and to exit companies. Like I said, 80% of these companies will go under. There needs to be failure tolerance, and there's in two different spheres. One is just culturally in business. Again, I'll bring up Travis Kalanick because he's, Slovak roots. The 4 companies that he ran before Uber all failed. He lost everybody's money, including his own. But he picked up incredible experience. He learned, he became a better entrepreneur. And by the time he was ready to take on Uber, he had a plan. He also had a bunch of flaws, but he was excellent at getting the Uber out to the global world in 4 or 5 years. I mean, they became dominant from scratch. And the company was started in 2010. Culture, this whole notion of how do you build an ecosystem of innovation and a flywheel. An example, we have, the PayPal mafia in the States. And PayPal, as you may know, is a payment company. They own Venmo and PayPal itself, started by Peter Thiel, and then merged in with a company built by Elon Musk. And later, the folks who worked there, Peter went on to start a fellowship where he was trying to identify the top high school kids in the country and keep them from going to college and tell them to start businesses at 18. And that program's 10 years old. It's already yielded a company called Figma that's just got bought for $20 billion. And also the creators of the cryptocurrency Ethereum came out of this one program of one guy. Obviously, Elon went on to found Tesla and Starlink and SpaceX and on and on and on. Reid Hoffman went on to found LinkedIn. Steve Chen and Chad Hurley went on to found YouTube. This is all from one company, okay? So again, this culture of innovation. From a policy standpoint, it has to get easier to form a company. This is something I've run into in the last year. In the States, I can go, and for about $3,000, I can start a company and have it open this afternoon with a bank account. All legal, compliance, everything, know your customer. It has to be quicker. There needs to be a way to streamline the legal system for starting companies, number one. Much more importantly is ending companies. Right now, there's liabilities that stay on with the founders. There has to be a way for a company to go bankrupt or dissolve in a riskless way. Otherwise, you're just going to keep people from starting them, and it needs to be cheap. Again, these are not easy, and I'm certain it would leave things open to be abused by, bad actors. But to find a way to have technology companies, innovation companies, have a way to be started very easily, ended very easily. It's important. Go ahead.
Sorry, Bob, can you hear us?
Yes.
Unfortunately, I have to thank you for this intervention.
I will wrap it up. Yes. So again, people, ideas, capital, and a culture of innovation. And I appreciate your time. I'm so excited about the Slovakia ecosystem. I hope you are as well. Thank you.
We appreciate. Thank you very much. Enjoy your stay. Thank you very much. We are going to move on, and probably you can follow us on social networks. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.